Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to demonstrate how to customize the design of a wishlist member registration form using Microthemer. Microthemer is a universal styling tool to visually customize the design of any kind of WordPress content with point and click. It's best suited to beginners that want to learn a bit about CSS code and more experienced developers that want to streamline their workflow. Microthemer is purely for styling content. It's not a system for adding content like Gutenberg or a page builder. Instead, it's designed to be flexible enough to work alongside whatever selection of tools you use. And that's the advantage it has over page builders. For instance, Matt created a nice video explaining how to use Divi to customize a registration page. But it didn't actually show anything about how to customize the form fields because, like any other page builder, Divi only has styling options for customizing the content that it actually generates. So let's start by making some changes to this form field using Microthemer so you can see how the process works. So let's increase the size of these form fields a little bit and make the font size a bit bigger. So to begin with, we just click on one of the form fields. I'm just going to expand the advanced options because that shows, we're going to be working through this throughout the video, this shows the underlying HTML used by the form, and it's useful sometimes for selecting elements. You see we can actually click on the lines of HTML here, and we can also choose our selectors. So the default selector always targets just the single thing we've clicked, in this case the input field. But if we scroll down there are 5 fields and there are some options. These numbers on the right here show us which elements it targets, and it's either going to be this one or this one. Yeah, we can see the green targeting updates, so it's targeted all 5 fields. Then we just go over to, I've already got the padding options open, but it's this one here, so I'm just going to add a little bit of padding. I'm going to link all of these fields so that the padding increases in all directions. That seems maybe enough, and then maybe we'll go to the font and I'll just increase the font size a little bit. Yeah, that's enough maybe. And by the way, you can work in whichever unit you want. You could work in pixels, that's the default, but I've chosen to set font sizes in rems here. And by the way, you can set, if you prefer to work just generally in rems, if you go to the general preferences and then go to units, you can just set all your units for all the properties in one go. Most people have a preference, more advanced users anyway, where they prefer to say use rem for everything, because that helps when you're doing responsive designs. If you set lengths in rems, then when you change the base font size, everything will just shrink a little bit proportionally. It saves you some work. So that's a little tip for you. And by the way, we can use this option here to disable the hiding. We just want to see the effect of our changes without knowing this. We already know what we've selected, and we just want to see it as a user would. You can just turn that off anytime. Let's also make a change to the submit button, just so you can see the process again. We will maybe set the background color this time. I'll set it to, say, this red color here, and then set the font size, the font color to, just go with white, and we can set the border width. Let's set the border width for all of them to 0, so it's not black. And then again, we maybe add a little bit of padding. Here we go, let's increase the padding. There we go, and we could also set some border radius. So actually, let's go back down here, and we'll do this on all sides, and we'll just set a little bit here, or we can set a lot like that. And again, we'll just turn off the highlighting to see how that looks. And by the way, these changes you make with Microthemer, they're completely non-destructive. So if I were to just disable, say, the changes I've made for this particular selector, the default styling just comes back. So it's completely safe for you to just play around and experiment, and until you click the publish button, the changes you make, even on a live site, will just be saved as a draft, so your site visitors won't see your work in progress. So I think that actually covers the basics, the basic workflow. And so now I'd like to move on to a real-world example of styling this whole page using Microthemer, starting with a very minimal default WordPress theme. So I'm going to go ahead and reset all of these styles and start from scratch. But before I do, by the way, if you happen to like this particular form design, If there's at the end of the video, I'll explain how you can import. There's a feature in Microthemer where you can import designs created by someone else in Microthemer into your workspace. So if you and it's also useful if you want all of these selectors I've created for targeting the specific parts of wishlist member forms without having to select things yourself. If you feel like that will save you some time and effort, then you might want to import this, even if you change the colors and everything about it, just use it as a template. So I'll explain that at the end of the video. And if you're watching this video on thememover.com, there will be links at the bottom of the video to just jump to the final section of the video and also to download the zip file, the design pack as a zip file. Okay. So to wipe everything out that I've done before recording this video, the option we're looking for is the history panel, and then there's an option here to reset everything. So I'm just going to reset everything. Okay. So now we've got this really minimal page because we're using a really minimal theme, the default 2022 theme. So just like checkout pages, we often want to remove distractions from registration pages so the user can focus on filling out the form. If it's not easy to remove headers and footers by changing the actual content that loads on the page, there is a quick way to hide them with Microthemer. First of all, we want to ensure that our targeting only affects the current page, so we don't accidentally hide the header areas on other pages of the site. So we can do that by enabling this page ID option here. And secondly, we want to make sure that we're targeting outer elements, and this is where the HTML pane comes in. You see, I was able to select this element by clicking, but it was actually this element here. The header element that we want to hide fully is this element here. And actually this little icon here shows you, there's another element that completely wraps this element, so you can move up to it by clicking there. And I'm also going to target the footer element. And by the way, if you hold Shift when you click on something, you will select multiple things. And let's also target this. Hang on, I think the footer element I actually want to move up one just to this one here. And then let's also target the this little separator here because we don't need that. By the way, you can name your selectors either at the point when you're creating them, like I am now, or later on. So I'm just going to call this hidden header, footer, etc. Okay, I'm going to save that. And then if I just go to the display, so behavior property group here, and then set the display value to none, then that's all disappeared. But what if we wanted our styles to affect not 1 but 2 pages or 5 pages? This might be the case if we have multiple registration forms for different membership levels. Thankfully, Microthemer has a feature for handling this situation using custom classes. And due to a quirk of how Wishlist Member handles registration form submission errors, it comes in very handy even if we just have one registration form. So it's worth taking a little detour to explain this. The quirk with Wishlist Member error handling is that when we submit an incomplete form, like I'll just turn targeting off actually first, and then click this, it actually sends us to a completely different page here. And so the selector we just created, which hid the header and the footer, doesn't have any effect on this page because, let me show you, I'll just target something. And then go to the body. So these body classes here, this page ID MTP page MTP5 is a bit different on this page because it's a different page with a different ID. So if we just go back now to the page we were editing before, gold registration form. If we look at the body tag here, you see it has the MTP30, and this is what the prefix that's added to anything that we select is MTP30, and that's what limits our styles to this page only. Okay, so what we need to do instead of using a number that's unique for every single page, we want to use custom classes that we can apply to any pages we like, and then have our styles applied to any of those pages. So firstly, we need to enable support for custom classes via Microthemer's preferences, and that's this option down here. It's off by default, so you just need to set that to yes, and then save your preferences. Then I'm just going to turn targeting mode off temporarily so I can follow this link to the edit page for the actual Gutenberg page where we've got our form. And this is where I've added a custom field. So this custom field option here, this will only display once you've gone into settings. Oops, sorry, it's this one. And if you go down to the preferences option here, and then go to panels, you need to make sure that this is turned on. You'll get a prompt to reload the page once you've turned that on for the first time. So then you'll get this option here, and what you always need to put in is my_body_classes as the name, and then the value we need to put in wishlist member, one word, -registration -form. And then you can put in an extra class if you like, separated by a space, and I've just labeled this gold reg form because this is what we're working on here. There'll be a silver one that I'll show you at the end of the video. And once you've added these classes, you just need to update your page. And then if you click this view page, you can just go back to editing the actual page with Microthemer. I'm going to turn targeting mode back on now. By the way, you can hold Control as well when you want to follow a link. Instead of disabling targeting mode, you can hold Control and click something, and then it will follow it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the label of the selector here, and I'm just going to delete it, and then select these header elements again. But this time, instead of using the page ID modifier, I'm going to use a custom prefix. I'm going to search. Microthemer will pick up these custom classes that we add. So I'll insert that here. And then, moving up to the header again, and then we were selecting, was it this HR element and this element, I believe, and then, I'll just paste in the label, so we've got that the same. So now this is targeting these elements. Let's hide it as well. Let's set the display to none again. And now if I just turn off targeting mode so I can submit this registration form, we've got on the Wishlist Member dedicated page, it's also hidden the header and the footer, and so all of the styles, we just go back now to that page, the gold registration page. So all the styles you've added to hide the elements, and all the styles that we're going to add for the rest of this video, they're going to be scoped to that custom class, so they will apply to both pages. So now let's get stuck into the main design process. I'm going to start by changing the background color of the page. So if I check the computer styles, what we want to look for here is where the background color is not transparent. So I can use these options here to move up to the parent element, and actually, so the body element sets the background color to white here. So if I go to the background color options here, and I'm going to set it to this color here, and then I'm also going to increase the margin a little bit, because look, I've got the element correct here, so there's a bit of margin that's created here, but I think we want a bit more because we've got rid now of our header element. So I'm going to go to the spacing options. I'm going to set the top margin. Just drag that a little bit down. Maybe that's enough. Now we can start creating some columns so we can have an image to the side of our form. So I'm just going to target here the main entry content element here. This is the wrapper for all of our content for the particular page. And if I go to the grid options, I can create, I'll just expand this a little bit. I can create grids, so I can create a 2-column grid or a 3-column grid just by using this dragger here. So we're going to go with a 2-column grid. Then I'm going to target this element here, and I'm going to make it a bit bigger. So let's have a look at what size it is right now. So if I just set this if I go to the dimensions group, I'm just going to set the max width to 100% and the width to 100%. Okay, so that's now filling up 100% of the grid area, which created 2 columns of this size. And what I'm also going to do, so this form here, this heading here, this is kind of the standard width of elements on the page. It's 1,000 pixels. So I'm going to actually go back to this element here, and I'm going to set the max width to 1000 as well, so that things line up. And I actually want this current default Microthemer remembers that whatever unit you've last used, and I want this to be 1000 pixels, not 1000%. And then I will center it by setting the margin property, set the left margin to auto and the right margin to auto. And then that'll be centered in the middle, so it lines up with this form here. And then the way I'm going to create, because we've only got, we don't actually need to add another div in order or an image for this octopus. I can actually create what's called a pseudo element. To create a variation, we use these options here. I'm going to choose after, and then a pseudo element is basically just an element that's created with CSS rather than HTML, so it's not a real like div or span or whatever. But you can use it for presentational purposes. So, like for instance, adding a background image, which I'm going to do now. So if I go to the background properties, I could browse my media library, but I've already created this. Microthemer remembers any images that you've inserted and lists it here for quick selection. And then I'm going to set the size to cover. So now we've got our image here. Next up, I think I'll set the background color on this reg form. So I'm going to go back, set here, and and by the way, you can save colors in Microthemer. So I've just saved the two colors I'm using for this video. So this is a beige with a bit of opacity, because what we're going to do is overlap this octopus in a minute. Before I do that, I'll just add a bit of padding as well. So I'm going to link the padding fields and set the same padding on every angle. Whoops. Hang on, didn't quite click the link icon there. So I'll increase the padding here. So what's happening here is that's about the right amount of padding. It's overflowing the area we defined. We wanted it to be 50%, which is the default width. Whenever you create columns using Microthemer, you can set the widths if you like, but we've just kept the default 50%. But it's got a bit bigger since we added padding, and that's because we just need to go to the dimensions group and set the box sizing property. So the default here is content box. If we set that to border box, what that means is that padding and border will be included in the overall width. It won't be added to it. So now it fills up the normal amount of space. And we'll turn off the highlighting here so we can see how it looks. At the moment we've got the tabs now in a bit of a funny place, but we're going to fix that now. So if I just, actually the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the position value to relative, and I'll tell you why in a sec. This basically sets the positioning context. So if I now go to a child element, which is these tabs, I'm going to move up to the container for these tabs, which is this element here, the toggle. And then if I set this position to absolute, and then I set the bottom value to 100%, and the left value to 0, whoops, that's top value, so the left value to 0, and then I'm going to set I'm going to remove the margin as well because we want it to be flush, so that's the bottom margin, set that to 0, and then set the width to 100%. It's a common value that I've got in the drop-down list. So now this, and the reason we've used some absolute positioning. So basically, with absolute positioning, it's relative to whatever the parent element has a non-static position. So relative, absolute, or fixed would count. And so when you set bottom 100%, it moves it away from the bottom edge by 100%, aligning the bottom bit. And with left, we just aligned it with the left edge here. And that just means that a bit later, I'm going to add some drop shadow. So I've got this mock-up that I've been given, which I'm going to be working towards adding. So there's some drop shadow that's been added here. And in order to get that to work without, so it follows the contour of both this main container and the tab, we need this we need to set the shadow on the element that contains all of this. If I'd set the background color on an inner div like this, which was separate from not a parent element of this, then it would have been a bit trickier. I'll show you, you'll understand that a bit later. So now if I click on, say, the child elements here, so I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to, I'll save this, and then I'll just turn off the element hiding. So you can see we've got this black border here, but we don't need that with our design. So I'll just set the border property to the border width style. Sorry, border width is what I want. I want to do it for all of them. I'll set that to 0. So that's gone. By the way, you can use the code editor as well when you want to set properties if it's quicker. Sometimes things like border, it might be quicker, depending on your preference. So that's worth mentioning. So what else shall we do here? The targeting again. So we've got a little bit of padding. This means that the user has to click fairly close to the text in order to switch the tab. If you wanted to change that, what I could do is just remove the padding from this element here. So they've got nothing there, and then just target the inner elements. Here we go. So I'm going to target both of them, and then I'll set the padding to, maybe that seems about right. Now, the other thing we need to do is make the active tab a particular color. So let's just hide this a minute. So this involves having a little look at the HTML. So sometimes this effect of whichever one is active is achieved by adding a class to the particular tab itself of, say, active. Looking at the way Wishlist Member handles this, we've got a class here. Where is it? Show WLM3 show new registration form. And if I click and then we go down and refresh the HTML pane, you can see that this value changes to show existing reg form. And so Wishlist Member basically just adjusts this class dynamically, and then either shows the this form or the create account form, and we can style the tab accordingly as well. As when the show existing form is used in combination with WLM existing, then we'll give it a background color, and when show new reg form is used in combination with this new account tab, then we'll add a background color. So what we're going to do here is create a selector where we combine two selectors with a bit of copy and paste, and then that way we can set styling for whichever tab is active. So I'm just going to click on this, select the main tab element here, which has this class, and then go to the create an additional selector, because we've already got the one which targets both, and then choose from the form where we want the two to match. So we want what we got. So we've got show existing form and existing account. So this is the one. So I'm going to just copy that, and then I'm going to go select this tab and choose an option here for which matches the show of the new account and the new account tab. So here we go, show new reg form, new account. So that's the right one. And then I'm just going to put a comma and then paste it in. And then that's our new, our active tab. So I'm going to label this just active tab, div tab, save it, and then set the same background color here. So let's see, background color, and I believe it was, so I've got the saved colors here, so it's this one here. And then I'll also maybe set a bit of, I'll just remove this so I can see what I'm doing a bit more clearly, and then set the top border radius to 8 maybe, or maybe a little bit more. Oh, and by the way, you can also, there's a, if you hold Alt and then use your mouse wheel, you can also move, increase these values. I'm going to add a fairly big one there, and then just use the same one on the right. And then I can also add a bit of border radius on this container too. So let's go down and set it on the paste that in on the bottom, and then remove that so we can see a bit better. So now we've got some roundedness. And now let's make our octopus man slightly overlap with the form so we can show its transparency. So we could use the transform property to do this, or I'm just going to use margin. So with margin you can actually set negative margin with CSS. So if I set a negative margin like so, then that nicely overlaps and our octopus man gets a bit bigger too. Now let's also set some typography. So Microthemer supports Google fonts. So to enable a Google font, go to the font group, set Google font from the list, and then we can browse Google fonts. And then you can search them here. So I've already searched for Railway, which is the font I'm going to add here in this video. And I'll set the for the heading. I think I'll just set the 900, which means just like very thick. So use that. This just means that it will load the Railway font in this 900 weight. And then for the labels, for the inputs, so at the very beginning of this video I chose the option which selected all 5, but actually there's also an option for 7 here, and what that will do is select the labels in the existing form as well, the login form. So that will save us a bit of time. So if we set the font, another Google font, this time I'm going to choose 700. There we go. It's just regular bold. And by the way, our previously entered values will be remembered here, so we don't always have to open the browser. Okay, so now we can also, and let's do the input field changes that we did before as well. So again, I'm going to choose an option for 7, and I'm going to increase the padding a little bit. Let's just, here we go. So yeah, maybe that's okay. Maybe that's a bit too much. Okay. Now I'm going to change the border, so I'm just going to remove that. We're going to set no border, and again, maybe this is what I was talking about. Sometimes it's quicker if you just set border 0. Sometimes it's quicker just type CSS if you know CSS. Let's give it a bit of border radius as well. I am going to use the UI for this because sometimes it's nice to have to use the slider so we can visually see how it's looking. Different values, yeah, that looks okay. And maybe the font size as well. Let me just, in order to add some code, I'm going to say my username. Just temporarily turn off my username targeting mode to enter values into input fields because it loses focus otherwise. So let's just set the font size to something like that. Let's also set the same kind of font on these tabs. So we're dealing with typography. So I'm going to just set Google font, and I'm going to choose the 700, which means bold. And then I think we're almost there. So, oh yes, I was going to, well, we've got the button to do. Let's do that. So I'm going to set this to background color. I'm going to choose this red. I'm going to set the font color to white. We're going to set no border. Again, I'll do this border 0. And some padding. I'm going to increase that and then set some, yeah, maybe that's okay. Border radius. Again, I'll use the UI for this. We'll create maybe we'll create it like that this time, to match the input fields radius. And we can center that by set the display to block, just to be sure, and then set the margin left and right to auto. There we go. And let's also give it a little bit of top margin as well, so that it's got a bit more space away from the form. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, now let's also add the drop shadow that I was talking about before. So I'm selecting this element here, and instead of, there is shadow properties here, so I could set the box shadow property like so. The trouble is, the container itself doesn't follow around this, and this is a special feature that you can use a filter for. So let me just clear this. So if we go to the filter options, and then I'm going to choose drop shadow. Microthemer just provides a couple to get you started, and this one actually I think works fairly well. And filters, they work. You can apply them to images. So for instance, you could apply a drop shadow to this octopus man, and it would follow the contours where the transparency starts. But you can also use it on elements that have, say, child elements that have different angles, like these tabs, for it to follow around. So that's a good tip. And then I think we're almost there. So if we just go to the existing form, one thing we need to do is adjust our targeting so that for the button targeting, so that it actually targets the login form as well. So if we click, this is the retarget selector, and there are different options here. In fact, it's easier. It's often easier. It's the same options up here as it is down here. It's just easier to jump to, say, an option that targets 2. And we can't see it because it's out of view, but we just know there's another login form, which this will probably target. So if I update that, and then we go to the existing login form, then this is gone red as well, but it's not quite centered, and that's because this link here, I believe, is floated to the right. So what we want to do is clear that float. So what you can do is on an element that comes afterwards, so this input field comes after the forgot password element, if we set the clear property to right, then that will clear this element here. So it's now centered. This one might need a little bit more height, a little bit more margin now to get away from this. So what we'll do is we'll create an additional selector for that. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to choose existing form type submit, which is just this one, and then save that and just increase the margin again a little bit. So let's see the top margin. There we go, and that looks a little bit better. Okay. And I think that wraps up the majority. I think that now is looking like the original design I had. So I just want to finish by talking a little bit about your selector management. So all of your selectors that you create are added to the folders here. By default, there's a folder called General, and it'll keep, you can have 40 per folder, and it'll just create another folder called General 2, etc. But we can rename this to something registration forms, so a bit more meaningful. Update that, and then the individual selectors, Microthemer comes up with labels, but it's a good idea to label things yourself. So this element here is the body tag, so I could just call this body simply, so that we know it's the outermost element on the page. Moving on to the next one, we could just call this main. This is just what we use to add some top margin, but we can just call this main. If looking at HTML, it's it's the main element below the header. We'll call that main, and then this one here is the entry content container. Some people name their selectors as they're working. Some people prefer to name it at the end. So a lot of people just never name them. And you can still see, you can preview what a selector targets by hovering over here. But it's much better in the long run. It only takes a few minutes at the end of designing a section just to add some labels that will mean something to you. So you can go through all of these. And the other thing I like to do is try and organize my selectors from sort of the way it appears on the page from top to bottom. So say body would be the first element. You can drag things by dragging here. And then the hidden stuff, and then the main, and then you might want to rearrange things a little bit here. If they're not in that order, that just helps you determine what elements, what selectors target what, keeps things organized. Another good practice tip is to use the history panel. So you can use the history to, if you want to go back to a change you've made before. The first 10, the most recent 10 listed here, you can go to all revisions here, and you can use this save option to save various checkpoints. So I might want to say, okay, the form fit seems pretty done now. I haven't done my labeling yet, but I'll save this here, and then because Microthemer will save the last 50 saves, although you can change that here. number of recent saves. You can set that to 300. That way you can just go back further in time, but it's useful to to save things permanently as well, like specific important checkpoints. The other thing you can do as a backup is export things. So I'll just show you from this menu here. You can export your CSS, and then you can give it a name, check which folders you want to export, and then export that. Then on the install and manage page, if you upload, so you download something you've exported here, that will download your designs as a zip file. And then you install this, say on another website, using this option here, and then you go to the import option, you choose the name of whatever you've exported, and then you can merge it. Most of the time you want to merge the work, the design with whatever else you're working on, and then so you can have this design, say, applied to your registration pages, and then you can make customizations yourself. And as I said earlier, I will include a link so you can download this design and install it on your own site, and I'll label these things here a little bit more. And then these styles will apply to any page on your site where you've added that custom class that we saw earlier. Let's just move up to the body. Where is that? Here. This wishlist member one-word registration form. So that's the important thing you need to add using the custom classes feature that we looked at earlier. And just to test, does this all the styles apply? And yes, they do. There's also this WP error thing, which we could also apply some styling for. But I'll leave that for you to do. And so just to finally show you, when you're, say, creating another tier of membership, I'm going to copy this class. Here we go. Wishlist member registration form. I'm going to go to, and this is the way to exit Microthemer, by the way. There's a WordPress icon at the bottom right. If we go to pages, and we'll go to our page for a different type of membership, for registering for silver membership. I'll show you what this looks like right now. If you go to permalink, and then we'll go here. So it still just looks like the rest of the site being completely white, plain 2022 theme. And so if we go in now, back to the page, and we will edit, we'll paste in our wishlist member form, and I'm going to write a silver reg form as well, and update that. Now if we go to view the page, it looks just like our gold registration form. And if we wanted to make some changes to this, so we could go into Microthemer, and we could say, say I wanted to put targeting mode back on, and say I wanted to target the inputs. I wanted to target these inputs with a different selector. What I could do is go in here and change this custom prefix to silver reg form. There we go. And then I'll just create a selector for that, and then say I wanted, I'll hide this so we can see what we're doing, and maybe I wanted to add a border. Let's say border 4 pixels, solid grey. Then actually I might want to just use the UI to slightly tweak that grey colour to make it a bit more silvery. Yeah, is that it? Something like that, I don't know. But you get the drift. And what we can do actually as well is, a good idea would be to create a new folder for this. I would say silver registration form, and add that folder, and then I'm just going to drag this in here. There we go. And the styles will overwrite if the selectors are equal in terms of their CSS specificity, which is basically a score given to these kinds of selectors. You get 10 points for a class, so this is 20 because there's 2 classes in this one. So if the specificity is the same as a selector like previously, like higher up in the list, like the selector we created originally for styling these inputs, then the one that comes afterwards will override. So the silver border will override any border we might have set on the gold registration form, or just for all registration forms. And that's how you can be very precise with your styling, and you can reuse it a lot efficiently and easily. And that's everything I want to cover in this video. I hope that it's been useful. We've covered some quite advanced stuff. We did with the styling the tabs and using absolute positioning to move these tabs up to the top so that the drop shadow would work nicely. And as I said, the design pack that I'm going to include below this video, which will convert your registration forms into something that looks like this. You can use that even if you want to create a completely different design. Maybe you want a similar format of an image on the right and a form on the left. But you can go ahead once you've imported that. The way to do that, just in case I didn't really make it fully clear earlier, is to go to the install and manage. So find the zip file below the video, download that, then go to this manage page, choose file, upload it, and then you'll get something like this will appear. And then you go to the import, choose, and the name should be pre-filled here, but you can select it otherwise. Choose merge, because that will add the styles to anything you've done with Microthemer. Click the import button, and then things will look a bit like this. You might find that the background color doesn't quite apply, because if, say, an element inside the body is setting the background color, you might have to find that yourself by clicking on it and looking here at the styles like I did, and say moving up the breadcrumbs. But hopefully, from everything you've watched in this video, you should be able to do that by yourself. And of course, if you have any problems, you can always just let me know. I'm always happy to help people out. So thank you very much for watching.